Welcome, everyone. This is AllMinusOne. I am Bill. Nice to see you guys here. I see Auntie Kami and Holly is here today, right now. I haven't been streaming on Tuesday, but I didn't stream yesterday because I was busy. So I will not be on the Unjustified Memes tomorrow. We're not doing a show because the holiday, and I don't think I'm going to do anything Thanksgiving, obviously. So I'll be back Friday at 4 p.m. I'll probably be talking about the origins of Thanksgiving. I know I was on Dragons of Discord with, or Discord of Dragons, whatever the show's called. He is the Unix Monday night show. And Don was over there, and he'll be doing the same tomorrow because many people don't know the story of Thanksgiving. And it's a holiday that celebrates basically individualism, free trade, self-reliance, and it's anti-communistic because the pilgrims, when they first came to Plymouth, were communists. But we'll get into that. We'll get into that on Friday. Today we're going to talk about diet again. I'm going to finish up what I started last week. Hopefully we'll get through it. And basically, we were talking about insulin and aging and some things that you can do. You might ask, well, Bill, what does this have to do with all the other stuff that you talk about? Well, frankly, we live in a very, very sick society, a society that complains about healthcare while they hedonistically destroy their own bodies at the same time. And there's a few things you can do, change your life drastically that can improve your health dramatically. I'm not here to claim that I have all the answers, but I can point you in the right direction into certain people who do have answers and for you to start looking things up on your own. So, without further ado, let's get into the first article that I have. And actually, real quick, because it just came to mind, I put a link in the YouTube chat for Entropy. If you guys would like to go over there for any reason, like the ability to chat without restriction. Unlike YouTube, over there, you can say whatever you please. You can also send paid chats. You can send a donation if you wish through PayPal, all that stuff. Regardless, I will be here whether you guys pay me or not. But it is certainly helpful for me and my family if you guys do such a thing. So real quick, want to check on DLive. Had to pull it up here. All right, so here we have, want to live longer, you may have to fast every day. New study shows that caloric restriction or calorie restriction on its own achieves nothing, but fasting for most of the day, every day, has geroprotective effects. I don't even know that word. Let's Google that. Or DuckDuckGo it. Okay. Yeah, let's go to definitions. How about that? I might have to Google it. See if I can actually get like a pronunciation. That's what I'm looking for. Here we go. Oh, that's neuroprotective. It's not what I put in there. Isn't that it? Oh, man. Yeah, that's it. Synotherapeutic that aims to affect the root cause of aging. Okay. Ah, like geriatrics, I'm sure. Okay. Okay. Anyway, sorry about that, guys. It's for my own curiosity. New words. They happen all the time. See, Holly says moving into menopause, intermittent fasting has been a godsend. Probably has. Holly probably helps balance out your hormones tremendously. And that's kind of what I got on last week is that we need to not constantly be feeding ourselves. Like in an ideal world, your digestive system and many of the processes in your body should have rest. And then the autophages can go do their jobs. And then you get cellular autophagy. Having the dyslexic read. Yes. Um, we can call it a vial of tears till the cow comes home, but the fact is, most of us aspire to die old, if at all. Vast effort is going to into aging in hope of striving off the evil day. I don't like her sentence structure here. It's confusing to me. Let me see if I can read off the bigger or the other screen over here a little bit better. Therefore, studies suggest a longer life in abstemious animals, albeit ones held in captivity who were simply fed less, were hailed. But why actually they live longer remains unclear. It probably has to do with lower insulin levels, as we talked about last week. That is a normal uh, marker for health and longevity is low insulin levels and high insulin sensitivity. Hey, Shelly. Holly says balanced out hormones and energy levels and fights aging, not to mention keeps that middle age spread at bay and keeps me at a healthy weight. Yeah. Well, intermittent fasting, one's going to automatically reduce your calories, most likely. Two, you're going to have higher levels of growth hormone generally. Now, you're a woman, so those things vary between men and women. Um, but for men specifically, if you're eating all the time, you're lowering your testosterone every time you eat. You need to have breaks in between. Um, in again, I am not fully knowledgeable because I'm not a doctor or a neurologist or any of those kind of things, an endocrinologist. I'm just somebody who's very curious and has studied this stuff for a very long time, for 15 years or more. So to have a good sense about it, right? It's one of my deep-seated hobbies. Now, a new study has delved deeper and found that we, the mice among us at least, can just eat all day as long as the calorie count is less than usual and live longer. No, we can't. The parameter crucial to longevity involving non-calorie restriction per se, that on its own achieved nothing. The crucial parameter was prolonged fasting each and every day, according to new research published Monday in Nature. Let's pull that up real quick. We'll let it load and come back to it. By Heidi Park at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and colleagues. Wisconsin. In the news a lot lately. Getting some left-wing protest of peace and some trucks. Let's see. Fasting drives the metabolic, molecular, and geroprotective effects of calorie-restricted diet in mice. Okay. Oh, there went my mouse. Put clearly, fasting every day from the one meal a day to the same the next day was enough to achieve the geoprotective effects. Co-author Dudley Lamming, also of the University of Wisconsin, confirmed. In mice, we repeat in mice. This is good to know if we want to stay in the veil, because free-range humans find it difficult to adhere to reduced calorie regimes over time. We don't just fall off the wagon, re-roll off of it. This is most likely due to Randall cycle effects, in my opinion. Again, the Randall cycle is something I will get into in the future, because I feel like I need to lay a base of a lot of other things first, just basic stuff. But essentially, the Randall cycle is when you have fats and carbohydrates at the same time. They block each other. They compete for uptake, and therefore nothing is taken up, and you tend to overeat, at least in part. The other portion of that is that it tends to put weight on you, tends to store fat over time. This is the problem with modern diet, with the standard American diet. And these effects depend upon your insulin sensitivity, of course, how much you exercise, how much how big your muscles are, how much glycogen you can store, those kind of things. So multivariate, multivariate as most things are. So if fasting is the key and not the calorie restriction, could a mouse be fed with mouse candy once a day, fast the rest, and still achieve greater longevity? They didn't test for that. Laming explains, we only tested fasting with a normal diet, didn't test what happens if the short fasting period mice eat a very unhealthy fattening candy like the American diet. Based on the literature about calorie restriction, I would guess that you would still have some positive effects, but probably not all of them. So, the mouse diet. No such calorie restriction longevity research has been conducted on humans for whom the parameters are more difficult to control. Yeah, that's why we don't really have any good studies for human beings. When given how much work has been done, how had the role of fasting itself been noticed during previous works on calorie restriction? Because until now, researchers studying calorie restriction and caged rodents routinely, unthinkingly fed the animals only once a day. The rodents eat the lot in a couple of hours and then get nothing for the rest of the day, around 22 hours a day, the team explains. The experiments indeed indicated the calorie restriction was geroprotective, or at least up to a point. There's that revolting parable about a miser who fed his horse less and less every day until suddenly it died just at the point the man groused. He had accustomed it to a grain of rice a day. Now, something to be said about that. As we age, because our bodies are not typically uh, doing as much rebuilding and building in general, like when we're young, we're constantly growing. As we age, we actually tend to need less. We tend to need less food. We've also tended, for most folks, to accumulate more body fat, which again means we probably need less food. Just as a little aside there, as something to keep in the back of your mind. So, having noticed that de facto lab rodents fast for most of the day, the researchers wondered if that and not the diet per se was the factor. The new study put the rodents through a series of feeding regimes to test whether fasting is required at all and whether calorie restriction is required at all. How was the murine longevity measured exactly? Did they impose the regime, then sit and wait for the mice to die? That too, we measured their lifespans. And as they aged, we examined metabolic health, frailty, and memory, which are proxies of aging. Yeah, like Joe Biden, right? Frailty and bowel movements and the mind going and Truanonama Shabata pressure and beta calf care, right? We add that the lab mice live on average for about 2 years. Here's some woman being 130. Reportedly, a 130-year-old Georgian woman looks at her birthday cake during the ceremony, marking her birthday at home in a remote mountain village. Yeah, and if she was that old, it's probably because she ate especially in Georgia, a very traditional diet and had very low industrial load. That is all the industrial toxins that are out there that we're constantly being exposed to. Since different strains of mice evidence somewhat different responses to dieting, they use two specific inbred strains. All the individuals of inbred mice are genetically identical, and thus there is some potential that results from looking at just one strain of mice might not apply as well to human populations. Well, yeah, they never ever will. But again, we can't do this to human beings unless we lock them in a lab, right, for their entire lives. This is why we don't have any clear data on diet. There are some clear data, but we have to look at history, and anthropology primarily, as well as just simple biology. We can't look at epidemiological studies because epidemiological studies are not conducted well, at least when it comes to diet. They're generally conducted via questionnaire that people fill out, and when they're a month removed from what they've been eating. Uh, Even a day or two. If I asked you what you had to eat yesterday, most of you won't remember unless you have some sort of freakish memory for such things. Let's see here. Catch some chat real quick. You guys have been pretty good in there, chatting in there. That is. I see Holly said all my evidence is anecdotal too. There, I don't know if you meant to something that I'm saying, but yeah, 100%. But that's the nature of this, because when you watch, like, say, the vegan debates with someone who's like pro carnivore or something, you're watching a debate between two people who have primarily anecdotal evidence. They have metadata studies based on epidemiological studies, which are totally bunk. Many times when you start reading the literature, you get into it, and you could see that conclusions and things that are brought about are not what the study says at all. I've mentioned this numerous times. If you talk to Aiden Paladin, who does basically nothing but sit around and read studies all the time. I mean, I know she does other things, but she reads a lot of papers every week. You'll find this, and that's what she's made a living on YouTube doing, is taking studies and debunking them, because of such inconclusive results. And the biggest thing, the most important thing is that most of this information is funded by your government and funneled by your government. And they're telling you to eat everything that's going to make you have a short life, weak, and feeble in old age if you reach there. But most likely, you're going to be fat, have heart disease young, get cancer, and everything else if you eat the kind of diets that they suggest. It's just the reality. And huzzah to you, violence is life. Huzzah! I eat very little outside of pagan feast days. Well, there you go. What am I congratulating? Driver's license, Nick. Big Nick got a driver's license. Wow. On the road. I need to get my daughter up on that so I don't have to drive her to work. She needs to get up on that. We show that fasting seems to be generally required for the benefits of calorie restriction in two different strains of mice, increasing confidence that these results might apply more broadly to the human population, he added. Conclusion: eating once a day and fasting for the rest of it is how a mouse may achieve the desired lifespan supposedly conferred by a calorie restricted diet. They checked for differences between males and females and didn't find anything much. And with that, the team has debunked the long held belief that if you half starve your monkey and your mouse, you improve their chances of living longer. And this has been the take for a long time. I'm not going to, finish that out. There's no real need to. But it's more about fasting and resting, which is why the 12 to 10 hour fast with time restricted feeding or intermittent fasting, whatever you want to call it, but the scientific name, modern name that's been spun for it is time restricted feeding. That's why it's helpful, in part. That's why it balances out a lot of things. And in general, from my understanding from Dr. Sanchin Panda, the thing that tends to happen is people actually do eat less calories. Again, I've made a video on that. I don't think calories are a very good model or judge of things, but I'm not going to deny their usefulness or existence. It's a mixed bag. I don't think you need to count calories, but counting them can be useful for, your own purposes. Holly says, next up in MSN, don't have a Thanksgiving turkey, eat tofu instead. Tofurkey, yeah. Yeah, eat the estrogenic soy, folks. Eat the soy and the bugs. So let's read this from Rogue Fitness. They had two good articles on this about aging, how carbohydrates, not protein, promote aging, and longevity hacks, a short guide to a long, healthy life. Well, the quest for a long life is age old as humanity. In the 20th century, scientists have made a remarkable discovery. Aging is malleable. We do not all age at the same rate. Some people age much slower, and others and live much longer lives, while some age at faster rates and die of old age while young. Can we discover why and how aging can be manipulated, slowed, or even reversed? Fortunately, we already know a good deal about how to do this, although the information hasn't crossed over into the mainstream. Before I discuss how to slow aging, let me get one common objection out of the way. The objection goes like this: I don't want to be old and frail longer. I saw how my insert relative here spent his or her life. I don't wish that on anyone. Let me die when it's my time. Yes, I agree. This is why we want to live well as we age well, do things that are going to allow us to be highly functional in our advanced age. I got into a lot of this stuff in the early 2000s because of a blog that used to be free by a gentleman named Art Devaney. And Art was espousing certain ideas, and he had done all these tests on his genetic aging. And even though he was in his late 50s or early 60s, whatever it was, he had the genetic age of like a 28 or 30-year-old or something like that. Um, I was interested by the gentleman because he is an interesting fellow. He actually was an economist, and he was applying what he called, and I'm not very attuned or aware with the theory itself, but I believe it's chaos theory in economics. I think's what he did, or maybe it's no, it's power law. Power law is what it is, which I'm not uh, really well versed in. So in any case, but I used to read his stuff a lot. In fact, I have a whole big binder of his stuff. He wrote a book I got some years ago, but then he put his site behind a paywall, so I haven't followed him in years. But he again, got me on this train of thought when I was in my early 20s. And of course, he says here, the author here says the answer to the objection is that we're not talking about more years in a nursing home. We want more years of healthy, interesting, and exuberant life. So, the most important discovery in aging, almost 90 years ago, scientist Clive McKay made a universal discovery, or an unusual discovery. When he fed his lab rats less food than they wanted to eat, they lived longer, a lot longer. And they lived a better, healthy, and more youthful appearance, more energy, and all around awesomeness. Since then, this procedure, known as a calorie or dietary restriction, has been repeated thousands of times and on many different species of animals, including humans. And in virtually all cases, animals live longer and in better health. In the case of humans, we obviously can't cage them and study them for decades to see how long they live. Nevertheless, humans who restrict calories have much better health and low risk of chronic disease. And so do humans who restrict their feeding window. So there's that. So he gets down here. There's one problem though. Calorie restriction is difficult. Animals kept in those conditions are hungry all the time. It seems unlikely that many humans would voluntarily adapt such an unpleasant lifestyle. But scientists noticed something else about these animals. Since they were so hungry when they were fed, they ate all their food at once. Then they fasted 24 hours until their next feeding. Maybe fasting was the key. And this is an important thing too. When you are hungry, that is because of hormones. One of those hormones is ghrelin. When you fast, ghrelin becomes suppressed. One of the things that ghrelin does is it operates on circadian timing, on your circadian rhythms. And when you eat because of circadian rhythms, that hormone gets suppressed, but it knows to be signaled around that same time the next day. So as you fast, the ghrelin signaling goes down, but as you eat at certain times of the day, you literally train your body to be hungry at those times of day. Most of what we feel that we call hunger, generally not just because of ghrelin, is hormonal. It's not necessarily because you're lacking nutrients. Insulin. In the 1990s, the scientist Catherine uh, Keenan, who now works in Google's anti-aging program, made another monumentous discovery in aging. By changing a single gene, her lab animals, worms, live much longer than normal. The single gene change involved insulin, a hormone that in humans is secreted in response to food. Now we're getting somewhere. Calorie restriction and fasting both lower levels of insulin. This may be the key to longer life and better health. Many people have taken up the practice of intermittent fasting, which simply means going without food for some period of time, often 16 hours. Sleep time counts. Fasting is a health practice, but like calorie restriction, also seems unlikely to be widely adopted. It is actually our natural state. It's something that was encouraged for health reasons for centuries. It's not going to likely be adopted because we live in a libertine, hedonistic, industrialized world. That's why it won't be adopted, because no one wants to struggle anymore. No one wants to feel pain. No one wants to be uncomfortable. Yet that is life. Suffering, endurance is life, and we want to not feel that. This is literally the primary modus operandi of the leftists, right? They don't want to suffer. Even the suffering that someone might have more wealth than them, even though they might have all their needs met, the fact that they don't have the same cool stuff that other people have means that they suffer, right? Anyways, but it is true. It is the far left, the extreme left. This is part of their mental condition that causes them to believe the things that they do. Without deep diving into biochemistry and physiology, it appears that most of the benefits of fasting come from just one thing: eating fewer carbohydrates, which are the main nutrient found in foods such as bread, pastas, pastries, rice, yada, 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 because they raise insulin. Ketogenic and low carbohydrate diets. One such diet is the ketogenic diet, which contains very low to zero carbohydrates. The ketogenic diet increases lifespan in mice, and and um, one way it appears to do so is by lowering levels of insulin. This is a universal, folks. Doesn't matter about your diet or not. If you have low insulin levels, you will live longer. Now, if you have low insulin levels and cancer throughout your body, maybe not, right? I'm just saying in general, as a general thing. So please don't someone come at me and be like, "But Bill, I had fasting insulin levels at this rate, or I knew somebody, and then they died of cancer." And it's like, well, they had cancer, partner. I don't know what to tell you. Let's see. Holly says, you have neurons in your gut that run off your gut biome. If you eat sugar, you grow the wrong bacteria that secretes hunger hormones that crave sugar, perpetuating the cycle. Yep. And sugar is also feeds cancers, folks. Uh, it does. They prefer that carbohydrate in most cases. There are many levels of carbohydrate restriction. A moderate carbohydrate diet is anything less than what the Americans typically eat, which is an astounding 50% of calories as carbohydrates. A low carb diet is generally considered to contain under 120 grams of carbohydrates. That is in scientific literature. That is not what people who advocate low carbohydrate diets generally suggest. Most of them would suggest under 100. Most would suggest levels that would promote ketogenesis, which will be about 50 grams a day or less. That is not a medically ketogenic diet. That would only be about 20 to 30 grams of carbohydrates a day. These are all different things. We have to understand this. I used to read studies about low carbohydrate diets, and they would talk about people eating 150 grams of carbohydrates a day. I generally am under 100 every day with eating fruit and honey, and maybe on occasion, eat some white rice or yellow rice or something like that. Because I don't generally do well with grains that are glutinous. My poor gut just doesn't like it. Centurions often have better insulin sensitivity than people much younger than them, meaning that they use the hormone more effectively and have lower levels of insulin. One of the striking features of aging in humans is that they tend to get fatter. Uh, I, as I told you, right? That is largely because of a lifetime of metabolic damage. Often, I would speculate, hypothesize, because of Randall cycle interactions. The Randall cycle, by the way, was discovered in the 1960s. You guys never heard of it because no one talks about it, because that's how this goes. People who talk about it are like ketogenic folks or people who are carnivore diet folks or whatever. It is not generally even mentioned. And it's an important thing. It's a very important thing. Spook says, "You're allergic to gluten, Bill?" I don't know, but I know that when I eat grains, I've had gut issues almost my entire life, even when I was a kid. Now, I didn't think much of it because you just assume that's how you live. As I got older and smarter, uh, try to fix some of those things. But yeah, grains don't tend to do well with me. I don't know if I have a gluten intolerance per se. I just know that those things bother my gut. But if you read into gluten, and you get down into what it does, it pretty much probably affects most people, actually. It just is to what severity. And, you know, I don't know why it affects me more than other folks, but I do know that my father has had similar issues. So I would suggest that perhaps it's genetic. I don't know. I'm not like everyone else. I live a pretty humble life, man. I've never made a ton of money in my life. Uh the way my wife's career is, we'll probably do well as she gets older, but I don't have a ton of money to go do every single test on earth. What I can do though is use my brain and n equals one, that kind of experiment, and see what foods agitate me and which ones don't. So, and that is common. For instance, if I eat pizza, like New York style pizza, which the pizza dough is kneaded and made to develop the gluten, like extremely, which is why it's doughy and chewy, right? That's the gluten. If I eat like 2 or 3 slices of New York style pizza the next day, my gut will be jacked all day long. So, um, seems to be the case. Anyways, one of the striking features of aging in humans is they tend to get fatter, and this results in worse insulin sensitivity and higher insulin levels. Right, because that's that white fat, that fat that is stored energy, not brown fat. Now, if you develop more brown fat, you'll actually be more metabolically active. And it turns out insulin levels are correlated with virtually every chronic disease. The anti-diabetic drug metformin extends animal lifespans. Now, you may have heard this from the people that are like biohackers, if you would. They talk about metformin quite often. A few years ago, it was a big thing, like what's his name, Asprey of the Bulletproof Diet. And I think he says a lot of nonsense, but whatever. Um, you know, a lot of these folks are uh, uh, able to take drugs like this and on the regular, and they're doing it because they're trying to live forever, I don't know if it's going to help them. But I think living in accordance probably to the way that we should live, like we should get some daily exercise, some daily sunlight, you know, eat an appropriate diet that is animal based because we are carnivores. In fact, we're hyper carnivores. That's the stuff I kind of started off with talking about a few weeks back before I went on my hiatus. The anti-diabetic drug metformin extends lifespan and extends animal lifespan. And people who take metformin have lower rates of heart disease and cancer than people who don't take it. That's because lower insulin levels means that you are in a less pro-inflammatory environment. High insulin levels mean high inflammation. It was not saturated fat, folks, that made people have heart attacks. It was a lot of sugar and their insulin sensitivity going down. That's why we have seen since the 1970s, since the government has told you to eat a bunch of sugar, eat less meat and less fat, we have seen diabetes and obesity and heart disease skyrocket. Correlation does not equal causation, but it's hard to get away from that one. It really is. And then the biggest culprit is them telling you to eat polyunsaturated fats, which go rancid and are highly unstable quite quickly. They oxidize with heat stress quite quickly, and they will cause all kinds of inflammation in your body, all kinds of damage, folks. Along with adding body fat, aging also leads to loss of muscle. And this fact goes quite unappreciated by most people. Loss of muscle leads to worse health conditions, chronic disease, ultimately fragility. Some of the elderly lose so much muscle that they literally can't get up from a chair. Muscle loss also leads to worsened insulin sensitivity. So what can we gather from this? Keep your insulin levels low, right? From what I read earlier, you need to fast. I don't think you need to go on a 24 or 22-hour fast either. I don't think you need to do OMAD. Now, OMAD, if that works for you, do it. But that is one meal a day, if you guys didn't know. But you should at least have a 12-hour window of fasting every day or nearly every day. Let's say 5-6 days a week, at least 12 hours. And I know there are other, fitness YouTubers out there. I'm not a fitness YouTuber, but like Coach Greg Doucette that'll tell you that's stupid. I like Coach Greg Doucette. I think he's funny. I think he gives great bodybuilding advice. Coach Greg Doucette is on every sort of enhanced chemical on earth, or at least he was. He's been on TRT for some time. I don't have a problem if you want to be on TRT, but that's not the natural way, right? The guy's getting an advantage by giving testosterone replacement therapy. I would like to do this naturally myself instead of having to spend a bunch of money on those things. Muscle loss is detectable when someone is as young as 30 years old and accelerates with each passing decade. Only in the West. Only in the West. This is not a universal phenomenon. This is like adolescence in the West. It's not a universal cross-cultural phenomenon. Or let's say not even only in the West, but in industrialized worlds and in modern societies. When they go and they study people who live more primitive lifestyles, right? In certain isolated areas, what they tend to find is the older people are generally just as healthy until advanced old age. We're talking like their 80s. They have almost nearly as high, or if not as high, testosterone levels. They have as much muscle mass. That's because they generally eat and have been eating the same diets for centuries of animal-based diets, right? And they get a certain amount of exercise daily and all those other good things, or weekly or whatever. When someone has reached the age of 80, he or she can have lost fully half the muscle they had at age 20. Fortunately, this doesn't have to happen. Strength training, aka weightlifting, and adequate dietary protein can all but counter the weight loss with age. So he goes over it so far, the story so far. How to optimize for a long life. The food you eat should be real, whole, and minimally processed. Yeah, yeah. And if you're going to eat what I would call junk, like highly processed food, do it on occasion. But don't try not to do it. Don't even have it in your house. You normally find this food around the perimeter of your supermarket: meat, fish, eggs, dairy, vegetables, and fruit. I would suggest cutting down on vegetables depending on what they are, because I think that fruit and root are ideal. Eating a relatively low amount of carbohydrates is even better. Avoid the ultra processed food in the middle of the aisle of the supermarket. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Body composition. To live long and in good health, you should endeavor to have a relatively low amount of body fat. Yes. We won't talk a lot about that right now, but we'll talk about probably body fat in the future because there are different numbers that are optimal. By the way, folks, most of you think or probably have heard from a lot of fitness people that if you can see someone's abs, you're at like 10% body fat or this and that. It's nonsense. You'd be 12, 15% body fat and still see someone's abs. That's all nonsense. The only way to really get a good body fat score is to get a DEXA scan or get it in the water displacement tank or whatever. And frankly, having abs shown just means you have muscles and you have little fat on your stomach. It doesn't mean it's not elsewhere. And people store fat in different places. So I don't store a lot of belly fat. I store it in my love handles and in my chest. Most guys store it in their belly. Most women store it in their butt and thighs. Some women, though, store it in their back and in their bellies, right? There are different places. There were studies done in I believe they were in the 1920s, where they actually would graft patches of fat off of certain body parts and then put them like on the back of someone's hand. And no matter what happened, as long as they fed them carbohydrates, the fat would continue to grow and it would grow on the back of their hand. It's just where your fat stores are at. It's just how you were, genetically predisposed, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending. It says, I wanted to pop in. Hold on, hold on. Let me get my mouse in the right spot. I wanted to pop in and send love. I am with family putting up Christmas decorations and having fellowship. Blessings of holidays. Cheers to y'all. Well, thanks, Yiz. Appreciate that. Said gluten I can eat freely now are ancient grains, etc. Nothing white or processed. Yeah, I used to eat Ezekiel bread and all that stuff back in the day, but I'm just not a big bread guy. I do like sandwiches though. Sandwiches are good. What is the Randall cycle? Well, I mentioned it in the very beginning, but essentially the Randall cycle is when you eat carbohydrates and fat together and they block each other. They compete for uptake and they tend to get stored as fat. It's something that has been known in science, in biology for over 60 years and is completely ignored by pretty much all dietitians, the mainstream fitness community, whatever else. And basically, you shouldn't be eating fat and carbohydrates together. There's some people who will tout this, like Dr. Rhonda Patrick, but she'll talk about saturated fat and sugar. There's nothing to do with it. Doesn't matter if it's polyunsaturated, monounsaturated. It's just fat and sugar. Period. I was married to a celiac for 13 years, was mostly gluten free. Once divorced, I started eating it again and I had a bad reaction. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and see, you won't even realize that's what I'm saying. You won't even realize it till you have it again in your diet because we're so used to eating it all the times. Like, guys, I know it's a little gross, but how often do you think about, your poop and what it looks like and how it comes out and how often you use the bathroom? Those are signs. Or your skin. Like I know I haven't been eating the quite the best lately. I've been trying to balance things, but I got like a little zit up here. And at 40 years old, yeah, I still get zits. My skin's pretty sensitive. It'll come out quick. Um, Now that probably happened because I ate pizza, thin crust, Saturday when I watched the fights. because when I watch the UFC fights, I usually make food for friends I have over. And lately, to be cheap, I've been buying pizzas at Aldi for $5, big old, big old pizzas, you know, and just being cheap like that. And I like thin crust because I don't have all that gluten in dough. And sure enough, I got like a zip because of it. If I go, I guarantee you, if I go to McDonald's, I'll break out immediately. Like my skin's very sensitive, and it knows immediately. But that's that people don't realize that. You're told, oh, hormonal acne. That's not real. That's just when you're a teen. Most teens wouldn't probably have hormonal acne if they didn't eat a ton of carbohydrates. You know, I had it as a teen. My daughter does to some degree now. My skin clears up when I eat right. It's amazing. It's because when you eat right, your body isn't in a state of constant inflammation, and it's not fighting itself. Many vegetables are roots too. Yes, yes, some, but most of well, I'm thinking when I say fruit, I mean like sweeter fruits, fruit and root like potatoes, um, parsnips, roots like onions, root vegetable, like what did I say, carrots, parsnips, that kind of stuff. Um, Again, though, how much you need of that really is dependent upon you. Now, for me, I would love to just eat straight a straight like carnivore style diet or whatever. It doesn't seem to work well with my gut either. So I have the best when I mix some fruits and some other stuff in there. It seems like, um, but I'm older now. I didn't have all this figured out when I was young. When I was young and I was like super in shape, like in my mid to late 20s, well, really until my early 30s. Um, I generally just ate kind of like paleo and all, and I really like salads. I just like salads. So I'd eat a lot of meat and whatever and big old salads and I'd be fine. But now I can't do that because it just tears up my gut. And the problem with that is oxalates and other anti-nutrients that keep you from absorbing nutrients. Oxalates are a toxin to your body. Believe it or not, guys, vegetables, they don't like to be eaten either. So lots and lots of stuff you probably never heard of. Now, don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean that your body can't handle oxalates either, but it depends on how much you're throwing in there. So let's read this real quick before we get out of here. The shorthand phrase I've come to use to describe the most important element of staying lean and healthy and living a long life is sun, steak, and steel. Sun, steak, and steel is practically the opposite of the advice that health authorities give us over the past several decades. They've advised us to avoid the sun for a long time now, out of fear of skin cancer. But safe sun exposure provides many benefits. I'll tell you right now that my understanding is that if you cut out the polyunsaturated fats from your diet, you will not sunburn. Now, I don't know if that's a truth, but I do know that it is the polyunsaturated fats in your skin that is in the literature, from what I've seen, is what reacts to the radiation from the sun that burns. It oxidizes. That's literally what it's doing. It's oxidizing based on that UV light. So supposedly, if you go a long time and you get that out of your skin, your fat, your whatever out of your system, like you eat a lot of saturated fat. Mind you, all fat has all three mono, unsaturated, polyunsaturated, and saturated fat in them, but to lower levels. So my understanding is that you will not directly sunburn, or it takes a lot longer. Um, Believe it or not, look it up. Fact check me. Safe sun exposure is important, though. It's hard to give general guidelines for the amount of sun exposure. Yeah. Because of latitude, your natural melanin, all that other stuff, right? Figure it out. Steak is among the healthiest foods you can eat. Another point against what we've been advised. Full of protein and healthy fats, it won't produce insulin resistance and is, in fact, a great fat loss food. Yeah, red meat is what we are seemingly genetically intended to eat. So now I eat some pork, and I do eat chicken on occasion. Like tonight, I'm going to actually make chicken. It's like once a week. As far as pork, it is a little bit more a part of my diet, but that's more to do with finances. Again, if I could, I would just eat eggs and steak and maybe salmon because I'm a pretty big fan of salmon. So steel refers to weight as in lifting them. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the final word, the factor that most influences our lifespans are about what you expect, diet and exercise. It's a little bit more than that, I think, but those are things you can control, of course. So once again, that was that article. What about berries, bananas, and tomatoes? Well, Spook, I'm not telling you what to eat or what not to eat. I am just saying these are ideas. This is what I do. This is what I understand is in the literature or certain people who are well versed in it, far more so than I am, who are actual academics in the area. There now, don't get me wrong. There is the mainstream academics. They'll tell you everything I said is nonsense. Um, Okay, believe them if you want. They have been telling people to do stuff for decades, and people have been getting sicker and fatter. So, you know, but yes, berries and bananas. Maybe not bananas, although bananas are, I like them. They're tasty, but berries primarily. If you go back, you look at what I talked about several weeks back. Let me see. I actually just pulled up. Show you the video. Got anti-commie over on the entropies for $15. Thank you, anti-commie. Eat meat. Make vegans cry. Makes you healthy. Full stop. Happy Thanksgiving, y'all. Happy Thanksgiving to you too, brother. Um, let's see here. Boom. There it is. So it's titled similarly. I'll actually put all these in a playlist when I get off here. Presuppositions, Dogma, and Diet. Uh, Anthropology, archaeology, and aboriginals. So what I do here is I go through what we know through archaeology, through isotopic studies, and we know that whatever human beings existed before modern civilization, I won't even say modern civilization, even ancient civilization, ate meat. They ate almost 70 to 80% of their calories from meat. And all uncivilized people, that is, people that never developed like advanced civilizations, primitive people, as we could call them, uh, ate high meat diets. And I go through several aboriginals or native folks and what their diets were. I look at what who do I look at in the video? I look at Inuits. I think I look at Australian Aboriginals. I should look at briefly the Mongolians because the people that live in the steppes of Mongolia who are still tribalistic and nomadic still basically live the same lifestyle they've lived for 1,000 years, other than the raiding and pillaging. So you know that's what this video is, and that was right before that was probably the last video. I think it was the last video I made before I had to take a little hiatus because YouTube is they're a bunch of jerks. uh in any case, guys, so real quick, I'll cover the rest of these next time. How carbohydrates, not protein, promote aging, because there is an idea out there from vegans that protein promotes aging, and it does not. It's absurd. Vegans think that the protein in animals, which is more bioavailable to you, by the way, meaning your body can use it more easily, um, is inferior to plant protein somehow. But they're all nuts, and the longer they're vegan, the more insane they go. Just because they're not getting the proper nutrients. Longevity tied to insulin actions in the brain. Insulin, central role in aging. Brown scientists discover insulin resistance linked to major depression. And finally, protein consumption linked to longevity. I'll probably have those in a better order, but we'll get back to that next week. Again, I will be here Friday at 4 p.m. and then I'll do the siesta stream on Sunday at 3 p.m. Should be with Aiden again. We'll stream for a good 3, maybe if I'm up to it that day, another 3-4 hours. We'll see. Lay back, you guys want to come hang out with us on Sunday for a couple hours, talk about the news of the week, and talk about trucks of peace and that kind of stuff. So that's about it for today, guys. Though I'm gonna cut out. I'll be back talking about Thanksgiving again on the old Black Friday on this Friday, and the next week we'll get back to the schedule. So Monday I'll be talking about anti-militarism and Christianity, and next Thursday will be diet again. I'll be finishing up with this, and then we'll get back to that Christianity and Stoicism thing that I was going to do this past week till Kyle was freed. So, and hey, it was a good reason not to do it. In any case, I appreciate y'all for being here. Thank you so much. Please remember, hit that like button, share, subscribe. You know the thing. Do that thing, y'all. No ends just for the memes tomorrow. Hope you all have a happy Thanksgiving. This has been All Minus One. My name is Bill, and I wish you all well.